him to go to this. She told him to go to the safe room, and she said to herself, she was alone with her little kids. She said, Hashem, it's just me and my children. And she made a hachlata then and there to keep Shabbos properly. And she says, I can't explain it, but the terrorists skipped over my house and her life was saved. So I saw that clip, and, you know, this event that we were planning on doing, we were planning for a while, but in the current matzav and with the urgency and everything going on, in the schos of us learning Hilchos Shabbos and increasing his Shabbos, it should provide protection and ultimately bring the Yom Shekulei Shabbos Mashiach. Rabbi Braun is going to be giving us a share. There is a Q&A, so if you are here as an attendee, you can post questions. Rabbi Braun will be able to see it, and, you know, depending on the time, he'll be able to answer. The YouTube is still not live, but we have plenty of people here waiting. I'm going to go with, let's start the share.
Let's start and then we'll upload the recording.
Okay, so without further ado, it is a huge schus to have the Meir de Asra, the Rav of Crown Heights. I also want to give a little bit of a hakar satov myself for the Ask the Rav website and making halacha so accessible to us. So thank you, Rabbi Braun.
Thank you. So just by way of introduction, apropos to what was said before, Shabbos means menucha, Shabbos means rest, and if we're looking for some calmness and tranquility in our life, there's nothing more than Shabbos itself that provides that. And learning Hilchos Shabbos gives us the sense of Shabbos throughout the entire week. In fact, the very, very last page of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe talks about the importance of spending time and learning Hilchos Shabbos. That's how Tanya concludes. And for us Chassidim, that's a signpost, an indication of how we're supposed to be living. When I got the original phone call about giving a shir, it went something along these lines. Can you give a shir in Hilchos Shabbos? And I said, Hilchos Shabbos is almost everything. I don't know, choose a couple of things. And it came down to talking about Bishul, cooking on Shabbos specifically. And the comment was, how long is the shir supposed to be? And I was told about 40 minutes. So it's obviously impossible to go through the entire Bishul in 40 minutes, on the one hand. On the other hand, it's important for us that this shir should be educational in two meanings of the word. Educational in the sense that we should know more than what we knew till now, number one. And number two, we should come up with practical outcomes that we could observe our Shabbos properly. So I'm going to try to focus, and of course we're going to try to do what we call some sort of a crash course, try to focus on getting the basic ideas of Hilchos Shabbos, the principles, as well as the application of the principles. So just as a starting point, one of the 39 malachas that are forbidden on Shabbos is cooking, otherwise known in the order of making bread. The 11th malacha is oife, baking, but normally we refer to it as bishul, as cooking. It's the same idea. The definition of mevashla, cooking, is when we prepare something for use using heat which comes originally from fire. That doesn't necessarily mean only with food. The idea of cooking could apply, doesn't make a difference for how we use the word cooking colloquially. But the word mevashel, cooking in Torah, is even things that are not food. For example, taking melting a metal, wax, or something like that in fire would also be a violation of mevashel. Now, people often confuse the two things. There's cooking and there's lighting a fire, the two separate malachas. So a person could technically light a fire before Shabbos, but still there would be a violation of mevashel, of cooking on Shabbos, if he actually engages in cooking on Shabbos. Or alternatively, someone could light a fire on Shabbos but not cook anything. So there's a two separate malachas. We're going to be focusing on mevashel and cooking. Most of us would probably not go on Shabbos and deliberately go and cook something because we know that's forbidden. But the parameters of what's considered cooking, what's not, is sometimes a bit unclear, and therefore that's the purpose of the shir today. The word cooking refers in Torah, the word mevashel, cooking, refers not only to the specific act of cooking, which is usually in water, but even to baking, frying, or roasting. So cooking, we usually cook a solid in liquid. Baking is like bread. Frying is usually with a bit of oil. And roasting is when you use coals or spit or something like that. In addition to all those aspects of bishul, there's also a separate, I don't want to call it a derivative or a tilde, but it is a tilde, is megas. Megas is the idea of stirring the pot. So the Torah Chazal tell us that as part of the idea that we're not allowed to cook on Shabbos, we're also not allowed to do anything which enhances the cooking. And what's unique about megas, stirring, again, the term stirring doesn't only mean stirring, but anything that enhances and increases and speedens the cooking process, that unlike the actual cooking, megas is a problem even if it's fully cooked. So you can't even go mix your pot, take a ladle and stir the food, even when it's fully cooked. So it's an important thing to take into account. We're talking about specifically things that are using the medium of heat. If we'd be cooking in the sun, or things that were heated by the sun, it's a whole different story. That's another whole discussion. We're not going to focus on that right now. In addition to the general, these are the Torah principles that we spoke about so far. There are also principles that Chazal told us. Chazal told us that you're not allowed to go and put something on the fire in a place where it could get hot and heat up and cook and boil to the degree that's considered cooked. Even if you plan to take it off pretty fast, you're just warming it up, you just want to remove the chill, because we are concerned that you might forget to leave it there. So you take something and you put it onto your blech or whatever it is, and I'm not planning to it's not even going to get hot. I'm just putting it there for a couple of minutes. That's a problem because sheme yishkach, you might forget. So if it's in a place where theoretically, if you would leave it there for 6 hours, it would cook, it would boil to the degree, which we'll talk about in a moment, what's the degree of cooking on Shabbos, then you're not allowed to even put it there for 5 minutes because you might forget to leave it there. That's one principle that Chazal told us. The second principle they told us, that in addition to the general issue that you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos, you're also not allowed to do anything which looks like cooking. So you can't put things on the fire, even if you won't be cooking, because it might be considered looking like cooking, and we'll talk about that. On top of all of that, there's a few other concepts. I want to focus more about Shabbos, but I will mention there's certain conditions of how we prepare our food before Shabbos. Generally known the term shehiyah, which when we put our food, the idea why we put a blech before Shabbos, one of the principal reasons behind it is to make sure that we keep the rules of shehiyah, but we're not going to talk about that. We're focusing just on Shabbos itself, not on Friday. Then there are rules about if you do have food on the fire and you want to remove it and put it back, there are a bunch of conditions attached, how you could take something. Again, this is all from Chazal. Same way we said before, you can't put things on the fire because it looks like cooking. When you remove something on the fire and put it back, there are conditions attached to that. I'm going to get to that in a moment too. And one other final general introduction is a principle called hatmana. Hatmana means insulating. There are rules of insulating that apply to before Shabbos, and there are rules of insulating that apply to Shabbos. Again, we're focusing only on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to do anything which will insulate. Something is already, you're taking something and you want to get it warm and you're putting it into an item which will keep the heat. That's what we call hatmana. Even before Shabbos, we're concerned only with something which adds heat. On Shabbos, we're even concerned with something that retains heat. So putting a towel on top of your pot or anything like that could be a problem on Shabbos. Despite having said all of that, it's very important that we eat hot food on Shabbos. In the olden days, the only way they were able to eat hot food on Shabbos is by insulating their food before Shabbos. That was the most common method. And the expression used in the Paiskim is mitzvah lahatmin. It's a mitzvah to put food aside before Shabbos. And what they would do is they would take their pot of soup or cholent or chamin, whatever it was, and they heated it up before Shabbos. And then before Shabbos, they would wrap it in a blanket, which is okay before Shabbos because the blanket is only insulating, it's not adding heat. On Shabbos, that would be a problem, but before Shabbos, it wouldn't be a problem. And that's how they would have hot food on Shabbos. So it's a mitzvah to do that. It's a mitzvah to have your crock pot, your blech, your pot of soup wrapped around in your blanket in your bedroom, whatever system you use, your urn. All of that is actually a positive thing. There are those that actually argue you're not allowed to have hot food on Shabbos, and we deliberately go out of our way to show the ending Shabbos having hot food, but all in a permissible manner. So going back to what we said before, that if you have something that's already on the fire, you want to put it back on the fire, there are conditions attached. I struggled very hard to find a mnemonic, a way to remember all the 6 conditions. Scrambler and Word Finder, none of them were able to come up with a good one. So I will tell you the conditions, and someone has a good way how to remember this. There are 6 conditions. Every time you have something on the fire on Shabbos, you want to take it off and put it back on, there's 6 things, 6 conditions. Number 1, it can't be something that you're going to be violating the halacha of cooking. So obviously it has to be something that's cooked already. Number 2, even if it's cooked already, it's got to still be hot. Number 3, you have to put it on something which is where there's no chance you'll adjust the flame. Typically, that would be a blech or something which is not adjustable. The next condition is when you took it off, you had to have intention that you're going to put it back on. The next condition after that, I think I'm up to the fifth condition, is you have to hold it in your hand the whole time. Now there's specific rules, you don't have to mamish, you can let it rest it on something. So when you're taking off that cholent to serve the early bird, and you want to put it back onto the fire, onto the blech, for the latecomer, you have to have that all in mind in advance, and you have to hold it in your hand the whole time. And finally, the last condition is it has to stay in the original pot. You can't transfer into something else in between. Those are the 6 conditions to make sure you could take it off the fire and put it back onto the fire. Now, there's a few important principles that we need to know before we go into some of the specifics. Generally speaking, we have a rule, ein bishul acher bishul. Once something is cooked, there's no such thing as cooking something again. It's cooked, it's done. The idea of bishul, as we mentioned at the beginning of the shir, of cooking, is preparing something for use. If it's already been prepared, you have a potato, and you cook the potato, and it's already a cooked potato now, so there's no such thing as Shabbos going and cooking a potato again, because the potato's already been cooked, it's no longer raw, it's edible. The exception to that rule is when it comes to liquids. And that's easy to understand because a raw potato is not edible, a cooked potato is edible. Even if the cooked potato cooled off and it's coming straight out of the fridge, but it's edible already. The nature of the potato has changed. When we're talking about a liquid, the liquid is edible, is drinkable before and drinkable after. What we're doing in the liquid, we make it drinkable is by the fact that it's hot. So the minute it cools off and it's no longer hot, every single time you're going to be reheating it, it's considered cooking on Shabbos. We're not talking now about something which is some rabbinic violation. We're talking about the very act of Shabbos. That one is now one of the 39 categories of work. You're not allowed to cook applies to taking a hot drink which cooled off, reheating it would also be considered cooking. That's a very important principle to make sure that we don't make any mistake of cooking on Shabbos. Anytime we're talking about warming up food on Shabbos, it would have to be dry. And when we say dry, we mean absolutely dry. Dry, now some people say that there's nothing in the world that's dry, but dry in this context means something that if you put your hand to it, and your hand would get wet, and you would be able to take that hand and touch another hand, and the other hand would get wet, that means this item is wet. So you want to rewarm your schnitzel. It's not pleasant to serve cold chicken on Shabbos day, the Suda Shabbos for the day, Suda for the lunch. It's not pleasant to serve cold schnitzel. So you want to take that food and you want to rewarm it. Not even talking about the fact that you're not allowed to put things onto the fire on Shabbos because it looks like cooking. I'm talking about actual cooking. If you're taking that schnitzel, most schnitzel is fried in oil, and you take that schnitzel and you put it in your hand, your hand will get oily. You take that hand and you move it onto the other hand will get oily. That means that schnitzel is wet. Sometimes there's some people that bake their schnitzel, people that are very particular about their health, and they'll have very, very little oil. It won't be oily. Your potato won't be oily. Your challah won't be wet. That's fine. Unless you put your challah in your freezer, if it's a normal freezer, if there's a frost-free freezer, there's no ice attached to it, and it's a dry challah, you want to heat it up on Shabbos, there's no violation of bishul. You have to do it in a way that it doesn't look like cooking. We'll talk about that soon. So again, that's an important principle to remember. Depends if it's wet or dry. The Alter Rebbe, in his Siddur, the Alter Rebbe wrote in the Siddur special halachas about Shabbos, specifically relating to bishul, and he wrote that people have to be very careful that there are things that are wet, but when you heat them up, they dissolve and they become, there are things that are dry, and when you heat them up, they dissolve and they become wet. So you could talk, going back to even to the schnitzel or chicken case, you could have roasted chicken or cooked chicken, you could have salt or sugar, a bunch of different things that are solid, they're dry, and they've been cooked before. Depending on the item could be cooked before. Salt is often cooked before, but now when the salt is being put being reheated on Shabbos, the salt dissolves, and once dissolves, it's treated like a liquid. And there we go again with the idea that you're not allowed to cook reheat liquids, because reheating liquid is equivalent to cooking. I do want to mention something important. We said that dry things, there's no such thing as recooking, but there are things that are the first time they were baked and the second time they're going to be cooked. Let me give you a case in point, a practical example. Some people like to put challah into their soup. Challah has been baked. When they're putting it into the soup, it's now being cooked. So even though it's dry challah, not wet, It's already been baked before, but now you're doing something different. You're cooking it, and that's a problem. Ein bishul acher bishul. You can't cook something twice if it's dry, but there's a possibility of baking it once and cooking it the second time. And that's where the issue of croutons, which everybody asks about putting croutons into their soup. The problem with the croutons is you need to know exactly how the croutons were made. If the croutons were baked and now you're putting it in the soup, so now you're cooking it. If the croutons were lightly fried, that might be considered the same as baking. If the croutons were fried in a deep fryer full of oil, then that's the same as cooking, because cooking is with water, deep frying is with oil. It's pretty much the same thing according to most poskim. So the first time was deep fried, the second time it's fried in oil, the second time I'm going to be cooking it in water. That shouldn't be a problem to putting those croutons into your soup. And because it's hard to know exactly how they make the croutons, I know at some stage, Osem, the Rav that gave Hechsher and Osem, Rav Lando, who since stopped giving a Hechsher, was insistent that it shouldn't only be kosher, but should be suitable to be able to put into your soup on Shabbos. So he wanted it should be deep fried. That costs a lot of money. It's a lot of oil. I don't know if that's still the case today. So if you want to make sure to put the croutons in your soup, you have to make sure that either that it's deep fried or that your soup is not hot. Which brings me to the next topic that we talk a lot about cooking on Shabbos. Cooking normally refers to when you put things into the pot, onto the fire. When you are talking about your plate of soup, there's no longer an issue of cooking because that's removed from the fire. In halachic terminology, that's called a kli sheni, a second vessel. The original vessel was the pot. The plate of soup, I'm not going to go into all the details about the ladle in between. I'm trying to keep this as simplistic as possible. So the plate of soup is now your kli sheni, your second vessel. And we have a general halachic principle that kli sheni ein mevashel. The second vessel does not have the ability to cook. It's good to know in general terms, whenever you hear something from someone else, it loses its touch because you're a kli sheni, you're already the second vessel. You don't have that same heat and warmth as the original person that said it. Very often we want to repeat an inspiration and it goes dull. It's because we're just not the kli edition. You need to warm yourself up as if you're sitting on the fire yourself. And that was a side point. So we have a halachic principle, kli sheni ein mevashel, a second vessel can't cook. However, there are two. Despite that rule, we still not allowed to put things in a kli sheni on Shabbos. And there are two reasons for that. Reason number one, because it could look like cooking. We keep on coming back to that idea. You now do things on Shabbos that look like cooking. If you're taking a raw item and putting it into a hot bowl of soup, it looks like you're trying to do something to this item, cook this item. The second problem with putting things in the kli sheni is that there's a chumrah that there are certain kind of foods. We refer to them in halacha as kalei habishul, foods that cook very lightly. Certain very, very sensitive foods, they would cook very easily, even in a kli sheni. And therefore, the rule has become that you can't put things even to a kli sheni. Some people extend it to a kli shlishi too. But because it looks like cooking, it's a rabbinic rule. B, it might actually be cooking because certain foods are very, very delicate. They might cook even in a kli sheni. There are two exceptions to that: liquids and spices. Spices may be placed into a kli sheni. Salt is not considered a spice, but all other spices may be put in a kli sheni, and liquids may be put in kli sheni. When somebody sees you putting cold liquid into a kli sheni, he doesn't think you're cooking. He thinks you're warming up the liquid. That's about it. Or cooling off your soup. I will mention, if we're talking about salt in the kli sheni, that the halacha is this idea that salt is not considered a spice is a chumrah. And the expression used in Shulchan Aruch is hamachmer tave olav bracha. If you're stringent and you don't put soup into a kli sheni and you don't treat it like a spice, you're going to get an extra bracha. This is how the Rama writes it. This is how Tosfos writes it. And this is how the Alter Rebbe writes it. And the Alter Rebbe repeats it again in his Siddur, and he said that even though our salt might have been cooked before, still irrelevant the fact that it was cooked, because since it dissolves, it's considered like a liquid in that regard. And if you're stringent, you'll get a bracha. So they say a story about one of the Chassidish Rebbes, I think it was the Munkach Rebbe, and he saw a person by his Shabbos tish, and he saw he's pouring salt into his soup, and he told him, I don't understand. For a bit of a taste in your soup, you want to miss out on the bracha of the Rama, of Tosfos, of the Alter Rebbe, of all those poskim. Now, how much would we pay to get a bracha from all these great rabbis, to get a bracha from them? And here they're telling you, salt in a kli sheni, even though salt technically is almost like a spice, in some ways it's even better than a spice, but there's a chumrah that it's worse than a spice we treat it worse than a spicy. We shouldn't even put it into kli sheni, so you're losing out a bracha based on that. There's another principle, and this might start sounding confusing. I'm trying to make it as simplistic as possible. That in a very, very hot kli sheni might be more severe than a regular kli sheni. So we should be machmir to treat a very hot kli sheni, which is coming straight off the fire. In today's day and age, it's very common. In the olden days, it wasn't so common. If you would manage to get your hot to stay hot over Shabbos, it wouldn't be that hot. Today that we have urns that are connected directly to the plugged in and are staying boiling hot, then the kli sheni from it is also pretty hot. And if it's pretty hot, there's a chumrah to treat a hot kli sheni almost like a kli. So let's summarize all of that and think about everything that we said on a practical level. I want to take something and reheat it on Shabbos. None of us is going to take a pot and start to cook food on Shabbos. But we want to reheat. We don't like eating cold food. So the questions we have to ask ourselves are, first of all, this food that you want to reheat, is that going to be actually cooking? Because if this is a food that is wet, even if it was cooked before, the fact that you're reheating it is considered like cooking. Question one. Question two, whenever you want to deal with your pot on Shabbos, are you speeding the process of cooking? Are you hastening the process? Are you doing anything that will make the cooking go faster? It could even be that taking the lid, when you take the lid off the pot and you put it back on, putting it back on makes the cooking happen faster. That is a chumrah, especially if the food is fully cooked. If the food is not fully cooked, it's much more than it, not just a chumrah. But there's something that we said before that mega stirring applies even when the food is fully cooked. And therefore some people are machmir, they won't even cover the food when it's fully cooked, if it's on the fire. So when you want to take off their cholent, and then they want to put the cholent back on, they'll cover it before it gets back onto the fire. So that's the second question you should ask yourself. Am I hastening the process of cooking? The third question, even if I'm not doing anything, is there concern you might forget and leave it there so long that it might eventually cook? I'm putting it on the edge of the blech, but will you leave it there but that part of the blech, although right now the food won't cook, but eventually it might cook if you leave it there for 10 hours. Maybe you'll forget. That's a concern. Chazal made a rule, you can't put anything even for a couple of minutes if you might forget. The next question you have to ask yourself, are you keeping to those 6 conditions of chazara? If something was on the fire and you're putting it back on, am I keeping those conditions, making sure I'm putting it back on the right way and remembering on those rules that it has to be, I have to put on something which has a blech, I have to have intention, I have to keep it in my hand the whole time, keep it in the original pot, it still has to be hot, etc. Am I doing, even if I'm not cooking or leading to cooking, am I doing hatmana? Hatmana is the idea of insulating something on Shabbos and retaining its heat. So usually that means it's usually when the top is covered, it's considered hatmana, not when the top is exposed, but that could be, there is a concern of hatmana. If, however, I'm taking a dry food and I'm taking this dry food and I want to reheat it on Shabbos in a place where it's not directly on the fire. So one of the things that we often tell people, you want to reheat your challah is dry, don't put it directly on the fire, even though it's already cooked. Best not to put it even on the blech. The blech is not, the question is that it appears like cooking, because the blech is not mamish the fire, but we usually don't even put it on the blech. Put it on top of the pot, on top of the blech, or on top of the crack pot. Then it doesn't look like you're cooking. That's not the normal way of cooking during the week. And there's no actual cooking because it's dry. That's the way how you would go and heat up your blech. Heat up your blech, heat up your challah. Alternatively, you want to take something cold and warm it up, even if it's wet, but you're warming it up at the very, very end of the blech in a place where there's never a chance it's going to get hot, even if you leave it until Matzah Shabbos. That's also fine, perfectly fine. The definition of cooking, I didn't mention this before, I should have mentioned it earlier. When it comes to solid food, how do you know that it's cooked? If it's fully cooked and edible and ready to eat. When it comes to liquids, if it's hot to the touch. In halach, we call that yatzei ledis by hot to the touch. Which is, it was an interesting question I was asked in one of the yeshivas in Israel, and it came to all the Rabbanim, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. One of the yeshivas had a habit that Bachar would go in the middle of the night, and they would take some cholent. No, they were very firm religious Bachrim. I'm not sure if this was permitted as far as the Halal was concerned, that was considered stealing or not. I don't know that part. But they were religious in terms of Allah. They knew all the conditions how to do it. But the one Bachar raised the idea that if you're taking the pot off the fire and putting back on, even if you're holding it in your hand and all of that, in the middle of the night, the cholent, the chicken or the meat, there's bones in the chicken that's in the cholent. And I guess in Eretz Yisrael they use chicken, not meat, I don't know. This was in the Ruzhny Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. And the bones, or maybe this was meat, the bones are not yet edible. So you think this was fully cooked, because it has to be fully cooked. That's one of the conditions. It has to be something that there's no actual cooking happening, it's already fully been cooked. But no, your bones are not fully cooked. It takes a long time to cook bones. This question was brought to Reb Shlomo Zalman. So that's the problem. You can't take a cholent off in the middle of the night because the bones are not yet edible, they're not soft enough. When the question was brought to Reb Moshe Feinstein said, bones is not a food. No one eats bones. And that's obviously a cultural issue, because if you live in Yerushalayim, then you take the bones and you eat out all the marrow of the bones, which is very, very soft. You're living in Manhattan with Reb Moshe Feinstein, who eats bones, so it's not considered a food. So I'm just mentioning that in terms of understanding the idea, you have to make sure it's fully cooked. The definition of cooking is fully cooked when it comes to salad. When it comes to liquid, if it's hot to the touch. One other comment I'll make, and then I'll deal with some of the questions that we got before the share, and then we'll see if we can deal with the questions that are coming in now. One other comment is that we mentioned the idea of once something is cooked, there's no cooking again when it comes to dry foods. But if it was fried and now you're cooking it, or baked and now you're cooking it, that's something totally different. That's considered doing something new to the food. It also works the other way around. You have something that's cooked and now you're roasting it and baking it. So often some people want to heat up food. There's something to think about. You take an item that was cooked, and now you want to reheat it, and you put it on top of your crock pot, on top of your pot, on top of the blech. Seems like it's dry, everything is fine. It was cooked before, I'm cooking it again. But come to think about it, the first time it was cooked in water. Now you're putting this potato, wherever it is, you're putting it on top of your pot. You're actually not cooking, you're baking. The definition of baking means without water. You're putting it on top of the pot, so you're actually baking. So why would that be permitted? Got the question? First time you cooked it wasn't water. The second time you put it on top of your pot, that's a form of baking. It's a whole new thing. And the answer to that is that indeed, of course, you're not going to bake something after it was cooked, but if it's not exposed to the fire directly and doesn't dry up completely and doesn't get all black, that wouldn't be considered baking in this context, and that would be permitted. These are again all the general principles. I'm going to go through a couple of the questions, original questions that we were asked before the shir to focus on, and then I'm going to go back to some of the questions now, and hopefully we can deal with all of them. One of the questions that we got was, and I want to answer those questions based on the principles that we said before. Somebody wrote that they had a crock pot near the sink, and they wanted to know if they have to be careful when they turn on the sink that no water will splash onto the crock pot. That was the question. Now, let's think this through. This water that's coming out of the sink, if it's going to splash on the crock pot, it's actually getting cooking on Shabbos. This isn't just a question of a wet item that's every time you reheat it is considered cooking. This water was never cooked. That's mamish cooking on Shabbos. That's ism and atayra, actual cooking on Shabbos. Yes, you definitely have to be careful that your water, which was never cooked before, should not splash in the crock pot and then reheat it and heat up on Shabbos. Another question was asked. Someone picked up the lid of the crock pot while it's still in the base and he took some cholent out. Now, he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't take cholent out while it's still on the base, because we spoke before about the idea of magus, of stirring, of hastening, speeding the cooking process. And even if it's fully cooked, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't do anything to the food while it's still on the fire. So the question is, what do you do with that portion or the rest of the cholent? Are you allowed to leave the rest of the cholent? Yes, you are allowed to leave the rest of the cholent. If it was fully cooked, in the case where it was fully cooked, it is a chumrah. But in this case, we're not going to forbid it b'di'evet after the fact. And that cholent and the rest of the cholent is permitted, especially that in this case, the person didn't stir it, he took cholent out. There's a difference between stir. You're not supposed to even take cholent out because it's like stirring, but not after the fact. If someone did that, the rest of the cholent was permissible. I'm going to read the questions in order. The next question I got is, what can we put on a hot crack pot? Kugel, schnitzel, only something dry. What does dry mean? How hot can it get? So we would have learned the answers to that. Dry means dry to the touch, but you have two hands. You have an extra hand to go through. So if it touches one hand, but that hand can't transfer wetness to the next hand, that's considered dry. So you can put any of those kind of stuff onto the, if it was cooked already, you could put it on top of the crock pot. How hot can it get? In that case, you can get as hot as you want. That's fine, not a problem. On the other hand, you could use something which is very, very wet and put it in a place where it can never get hot to the touch. That would also be okay, because that's not considered cooking. The next question was, what happens if I by mistake did hatmana? Hatmana, you'll recall, is insulating. So there's two aspects of hatmana. Is hatmana before Shabbos. Hatmana before Shabbos is doing something which will insulate it with something which adds heat. And something which is not well known. Some people cover their urn with a towel, and that's considered an insulator which adds heat because the towel is on an urn and it's a very hot urn. So the towel is considered something that adds heat, and that would be forbidden even on Erev Shabbos. And there's also hatmana on Shabbos, even something that just retains heat. And what happens if somebody did hatmana? But the first thing is, if you did hatmana, stop the hatmana, undo the hatmana, take off the wrapper. That's the first thing. The question is if you could use the food, so that depends on a lot of different factors. On Shabbos, if somebody did hatmana, and it's something which it actually didn't add to the food, in other words, it wasn't a cold food that became hot. It wasn't a food that the more it gets hot, the more it's edible. It's something just retaining its current state. You didn't add anything. In such a case, after the fact, it would be permissible on Shabbos. If you didn't really benefit anything from the Isser, because it was hot and it's still hot, you didn't add anything, then after the fact, it will be permissible on Shabbos. There was another question asked, when I put kugel into a chalent in a closed bag, a hole is made in it and it shouldn't be hatmana. This is important to point out. A lot of people put their kugel in their chalent and they wrap it with silver foil or whatever it is, and the real reason is because they don't want to mix with the rest of their chalent. The kishka stays better that way. So it is recommended to make a hole or puncture something in the bag of the silver foil, so it's not considered hatmana, because if it's wrapped in a silver foil, it's insulated. That's what we really should be doing. The question was, what if the person didn't make a hole? Can they use the chalent? Can they use the kugel? The chalent certainly would be okay, but even the kugel would be okay, because again, after the fact would be okay. There are many persons that argue that it's not hatmana to begin with. It's like two foods cooking together. And the purpose of the silver foil is not to insulate the kugel, it's just to make sure that the kugel and the chalent don't mix with each other. So although on Friday, when we're putting your kugel or your kishkan to your chalent, and it's wrapped with something, with a silver foil or a bag, you should make a hole in it. If you didn't make a hole in it, it's still permissible to eat. There was a question, what can you put in your Shabbos oven on Shabbos? That's a serious issue. You can't put anything into your Shabbos oven on Shabbos. First of all, before we can talk about Bishul, because most ovens are thermostat controlled. And every time you open the oven, you're affecting the thermostat. It has nothing to do with Bishul, it has to do with Havara, with lighting a fire. But even if your thermostat is broken, we have some system where the thermostat is off. If you're going to be reheating food in the oven, everything that we spoke about is not in the oven. In the oven, it's a much more serious issue. If the oven is on, certainly that would be a problem, and that would be a problem with anything. There were other questions that were asked. I'm going to go read from the chat over here. Can I leave the pot of chalent on the blech and pour it to a plate directly from the blech? There would be absolutely no problem doing that. I'm not sure how clever that is from a safety point of view, but if you have a pot of chalent and it's actually on the blech, and all you're doing is pouring from it, you're not stirring it with a spoon, you're not doing anything to enhance the cooking, that would actually be okay. The only thing you have to realize is that never mind that, again, I don't know how this would work from a safety point of view, but your plate would be considered definitely a kli sheni, or even worse, irim kli rishon. Sometimes the plate is not a kli sheni because you use a ladle in between, but it wouldn't be a problem with that. Can you put ice cubes in your soup on Shabbos? So what's happening here is this is a different issue altogether. This is not an issue of cooking, because ice cubes might be considered a liquid and it's a kli sheni. The problem with ice cubes in your soup is because of dissolving. You're not allowed to make things dissolve, moiled, and that's a problem putting ice cubes in your soup. I'm just going to continue with the questions in here. Trying to go in order. Can I pour hot water over pasta to warm the pasta? So assuming, again, if your pasta would be dry, and it was cooked before, I really don't see what the problem would be. Wouldn't be a problem whatsoever. If you're talking now about pasta which is wet, so then if you recook it on Shabbos, it's a problem. If you're pouring it, however, from a kli shlishi, that's how the question was worded over here, there really wouldn't be a problem. Liquids don't cook if it's pasta. It's a kli sheni. Croutons question. If your soup is in a kli shlishi, and then you add your croutons, does it matter how the croutons were made? But this is an important question. I did not address this specifically. We spoke about the fact there's an issue how your croutons are made. Are your croutons fried? Are they baked? Are they cooked? And the concern is because even a cliche low, a cliche doesn't cook. It looks like cooking, and B, some foods could cook in a cliche, and maybe croutons are one of those foods. We didn't talk about klishlishi. So there's a big machlekes about that. There's a famous Moshe Yes song that says there ain't no bishul in the klishlishi, but Moshe Yes was not a rab. Many poskim are lenient when it comes to a klishlishi. They're very, very lenient about that, and that's the accepted approach. However, there are those that are machmer with the klishlishi, and there's certainly room to be machmer. Certainly, the idea that it appears like cooking would make sense. Klishish, sheni, or shlishi looks the same thing to the onlooker. So there's somebody wants to be machmer, there's room to be machmer, but the standard custom that a kli shlishi is there's no longer a problem when it comes to kli shlishi. So then it wouldn't matter how your croutons are made. So there's quite a few questions here. Can we cover the food on the blech with a towel on Shabbos or only before Shabbos? Neither of them. You can't cover it before Shabbos, on Shabbos, or even before Shabbos, because that's considered insulating with something that adds heat. Can I leave food in the oven that's on from before Shabbos and then take out some food from the on oven out and leave some other from the oven for later? There's a lot of misconception out there about the Shabbos mode ovens, which are, I'm not sure why they're being marketed as Shabbos mode. The individual agency that gives a hechsher believes that it's okay for Shabbos, but almost all places do not accept that, and they say it's not correctly labeled as Shabbos mode. It should be called Yom Tov mode. And because of that labeling, a lot of people are assuming that all these Shabbos modes ovens are okay. And for more detail, it's probably a good idea to look. I wrote an extensive long article about this on the Astrarav website. Actually, rephrase, I didn't write an article, I edited someone else's article. A rabbi in Australia wrote a beautiful article about this, and we have it on our website. And the problem is, if the oven is on, it's certainly a problem. Like we mentioned, there's a thermostat issue, even in the Shabbos mode ovens. And there's also a problem of what you could do, let me put it differently. What a lot of people do is they have their oven on, and it goes off at a certain time on Shabbos. And once it's off, they could open the oven and take things out. That's not a problem. You can't put things back in. But to actually work with the oven and take things out, certainly put things in, that would be a serious issue on Shabbos. Someone asked a question, a hot plate is the same as a blech. So a hot plate that's not adjustable has advantages over a blech. A blech, you're taking something, you have a fire which is adjustable. And what you're doing is you're covering that it shouldn't be adjustable. A hot plate doesn't even have the problem to begin with because you can't adjust anything. So it's very similar to a blech. If it's a hot plate that gets so hot that could actually cook food, then you shouldn't be putting food directly onto the hot plate on Shabbos. I'm talking food that you're allowed to cook that's absolutely dry. But right, we mentioned earlier that you shouldn't even food that's dry. But if you want to warm it up, you should put it on top of a pot, not directly on the blech. With regard to a hot plate, depends. There are some hot plates that are not that hot, and nobody would ever bother cooking anything on this hot plate during the week because it just wouldn't work. In those hot plates, then yeah, you could put things directly onto the hot plates, things that you're allowed to cook on Shabbos because they're already being cooked and they're dry. But if it's those hot plates that are pretty hot, then that would be a problem. Yeah, someone asked me if I should repeat again. No, you're not allowed to put a towel on top of the urn. That's a very, very serious issue. A lot of people do that. I'm not sure why. It's a very, very serious issue. It's absolute form of atmana. Can I add hot water from the urn into the crack pot that is on? Yes. Okay, there are a lot of conditions to make sure to do that properly. I always joke around when people ask me about adding hot water. You think the chalk might start burning out, and when I had hot water, I joke around that you can't. It's hard to do in a way that you satisfy three concerns. Concern number one: make sure that you're not doing anything which is wrong on Shabbos. Concern number two: make sure that you don't do things in a way that there's no basad chalav problems because your chalk pot is fleshy, and your urn you want to retain parav. And concern number three: you want to do things in a safe way. I don't know how you do all those three things together. Because ideally, you're supposed to take the pot of chalk off the fire. Shouldn't be on the fire when you're adding the water to it. Hold it in your hand. Pour water from the urn without putting it through another vessel in between, directly from the urn. But keep a distance so it doesn't splash the chalk. The heat from the chalk doesn't go up onto the urn and doesn't directly go from the urn into the chalk pot. So it has to be a trickle coming from the urn. Try to do all of that while holding it. I'm not sure how you do that in a safe way, but technically, yes, it could be done. Someone wrote it, I can't wrap a hot pot of soup in a towel before Shabbos used Friday night. I want to clarify, no, that you could do, that's perfectly fine. A hot pot of soup that you're putting in a towel is not an insulator that, before Shabbos, the problem of Hatmana is adding heat. On Shabbos, the problem of Hatmana is insulating, retaining heat. So if you're taking a hot pot of soup off your fire, and it's one of the best ways to keep your soup hot, try that it works, and you're putting it in, taking it off the fire and putting it into a towel, into a blanket, that's not a problem. That's not adding heat. That's just retaining the heat that's there. But if you're going to be doing your urn, and you're putting a towel on that, that towel actually has heat from the urn, direct heat. It's actually adding heat. That would be the problem. So I just want to make sure that's very, very clear. I think we covered most of the questions. I don't think we could actually cover all the questions. I want to wish all those who arranged this, especially Yeshakeh for those that arranged this, and they should help in this unbelievable schus Rabban and the schus of Nashim Tzidkaniyos. They're the ones that bring the Geula. So all those that are attending over here are the Nashim Tzidkaniyos that we're talking about, and their Shabbos on their hands, they'll become even more Nashim Tzidkaniyos, and it'll certainly bring the Geula. And they should help. We should have the real ultimate Shabbos. We should have a world we no longer talk about all this garbage, a world which is only Shabbos and Menucha. And all these halachas will help us get there much, much quicker, taking me out of Mamish again, Shekhet for those who arranged it.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Braun. And I will also give a thank you to Miriam Benyaminson and Beiser Fana, who was in touch with the Rev. So thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to the next part of the program. We will email out a recording. The first part of Rabbi Braun's talk did not make it into the current YouTube. So if you came on later and you want the recording, we'll email it out. We will WhatsApp it. We'll try to get it to everybody. So we enhanced the cooking on Shabbos. Now we're looking to enhance the cooking for Shabbos. And it's an honor to introduce a shlucha from Montclair, New Jersey, who I've seen her mouth-watering tables and pictures for years. And I always see all the gorgeous colors, and it all comes together so beautifully. So I'm really excited how we could enhance our Shabbos, both Ruchnias, both Gashmias. So I'd like to welcome Ita. Ita, you on? I see you on unmuted. Okay, here we go. Welcome. Thank you.
Wait, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
No, Ita, we don't hear you. We see you. No problem. While Ita is working on,
Splendid.
oh, we got you. We got you. No, now we don't. We heard you for a second. We see you. We're excited. We heard you for like a second. Nope. Noah, can you put up the Kapitel Tehillim? We'll say Tehillim for Eretz Yisrael while she gets her sound. We're gathered together, so many alumni. I'm going to say a Kapitel again in honor of Yudal Cheshvan, together crying with Mama Rachel. We're doing what we can. So many different initiatives, from Shabbos candles to tzedakah to tznius to tonight Shabbos, and Hashem should really hear us and really give us that ultimate freedom. Okay.
Yeah, they could hear you.
Okay, we hear you now, but since we put it up, let's just say this Kapitel quickly. Lam Natzech Mizmar LeDavid Yancha Denai B'Yam Tzara Yisagef Chachem LeHeyaka Vishlach Ezracha Mekaydish Mitzin Esadecha Yiskar Kam Chaysacha V'Alefcha Yidash Nasela Yitain Lechach Levacha V'Chala Tzascha Yimali Nrana B'Shuasecha V'Shem Lehinu Nitgal Yimali Denai Kal Mashal Secha Ate Daiti Ki Ashia Denai Mishicha Yaneu Mishme Kache B'Kvura Seisha Yaminai Ela V'Racha V'Ela V'Susim V'Anachnu B'Shem Denai Lehinu Nasker Hey Makar V'Nefalu V'Anachnu Kamnu V'Saida Denai Ashia Melch Yanenu B'Yem Karenu. And we are so looking forward to hear the tips, get ideas to really enhance our Shabbos. Ita, you always make it look easy, so I hope it's gonna now look easy for us too, to have this colorful table. And
Hey. Okay.
yes,
Yeah, we hear you.
Go ahead.
We're hearing me now?
we hear you, and we are
Okay.
ready and excited.
My
Welcome.
scariest part of this is that I'm so tech challenged and I'm like, I don't know how to use Zoom. What am I going to do?
You're great. You're great. Now we're gonna hear from you, the expert with food. Okay, go for it.
Okay, no, you're being way too generous over there. Okay, so firstly, without unplugging this, I just want to show you, I don't know if you could see my my pretty vegetables over there. But
Yeah,
anyways,
see, and it's gorgeous.
Okay, no, because like you have to see that part to fully appreciate. Okay, so firstly, I wanted to say thank you so much for having me. I actually am a Beis Rivka alumni. I was in Sem Beis Rivka, I don't want to say how many years ago. I don't want to say 18 years because in my head I'm still 18. So anyways, okay. So they told me not to say that I'm not a blogger. Sorry, I apologize. But I'm not a blogger. I'm just a simple shulcha who has to feed a lot of people and without a lot of time, and I like shortcuts. So that's it. So I'm just gonna share my little shortcuts, and I hope they work for you. They're not very fancy though. No, I'm no busy in Brooklyn. But anyways, so first of all, also another point, I'm currently borrowing my mother's kitchen. It was 15 minutes from me. I don't have a kitchen. We started construction, of course, assuming it was going to be done before Rosh Hashanah, which very much did not happen. So I could actually give a Zoom on how to cook 50 plus people, how to cook for 50 plus people per meal without a kitchen. Anyways, so just a little background for a context. Hold on, give me a moment. So before we got married, my husband asked me, he's like, do you know how to cook? And I very honestly told him absolutely not. And he laughed. Then fast forward like a month after we were married, we were cooking something and he asked me to boil a pot of water. And I was like, wait, boil, that means like with bubbles in it? And the look on his face told me that he clearly realized that I was not kidding. There was no joke. Anyway, again, fast forward a few years and we moved on to Hilchos. And all of a sudden I found myself having to cook for, again, lots of people without actually, knowing how to cook. So I went and got somebody had given me like for my wedding present, a cookbook, one of these Susie Fishbein fancy cookbooks where all the ingredients you basically can't pronounce and are only sold in specialty stores. That was my cookbook. That's what I started with. I actually remember one particular Friday, I was making a salad that called for pomegranate seeds, which is not such a, it's not such a luxury item, but there were no pomegranates to be found. I think I finally found one. It was like a $15 for one pomegranate. And I went ahead and bought it because the salad said you need to have pomegranates. So I need to have my pomegranate seeds, have to follow the recipe. Anyways, hold on. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Anyway, so I then, after a while, I realized I was like, hey, nothing against Susie Fishbein, but anybody who writes a cookbook, they're making up the recipe. So like, why can't I tweak it, change it, or kind of make up my own? So everything I do is based off of a recipe. I'll take a recipe, then I'm like, I need more color. I was going to say my two main things are, I love lots of color, like Sarah mentioned. I do love color. And I also love like at the least amount of prep steps as possible. So I'm always cutting out prep steps. So like take 2 bowls, and I'm like, no 2 bowls, 1 bowl, or no bowls. Anyway, hold on. A few times, friends ask me for recipes for salads, and I send them the recipe, and then I'm at their house and I'm like, oh, this salad looks great. Can I have the recipe? And they're like, it's from you. And I didn't recognize it because I totally swapped out all the ingredients and put in other ingredients. But anyways, okay, so I'm going to start somewhere. The first place I want to start, and I want to see if you could see see what's going on over here. But basically, I have over here just a simple quinoa salad, a simple quinoa. And I would say my favorite things, I'm going to adjust it a little bit. Maybe you could see a little better. Oh, not really.
Yeah,
sorry.
I see your quinoa. We see it, Ita.
Okay, we're going to go back here. Okay, so some of my favorite things are like not these luxury fancy items, just parsley, simple parsley, sweet potato, pomegranate seeds, just things that add color. So you take just a plain, simple bowl of quinoa, which, always nice if you have a nice plate. Now, this is not my favorite, but it's what I have. And I'm going to grab over here. I have cut up onion. So I like stick some cut up onion in there. Some very pretty parsley. So you put in some pretty curly parsley over here. Always pomegranate seeds if it's not $12 or $15. Add some pomegranate seeds and sweet potato. This is just like random examples of what I like to use. I'll just be like, I'll look at the recipe and I'm like, nope, that needs more color. Add some sweet potatoes. And I don't know if you could see the salad, but there you have a very colorful quinoa salad.
It's gorgeous. See it.
Okay, good. Another example. Okay, I'm going to take away the quinoa salad. That's just a basic example. Another one is here we have butternut squash. So just, it's a tip with really like any grilled veggies, but this just happens to be an example of butternut squash. Also, sorry, I forgot to put the red pepper over there, but that adds a lot of colors. We have orange, red, purple, and pink over there. So here also the parsley, parsley is like one of my best friends. So I add a few pieces of parsley over here to the butternut squash, some pomegranate seeds, and let's see, I have lots of options here. So it doesn't have to be this. These are just examples. Again, you can make up your own recipes. You're in charge. That's what I discovered after the $15 pomegranate. Some purple onion over here. And then, again, I'm not making tahina. I'm not mixing anything with my tahina. I'm just going to take my squirt sesame tahina and drizzle it on top. And there, all of a sudden, I have a dish that's full of lots of color. And then I could post it to my Facebook, and Sarah's going to see my fancy meal and think that like I'm a fancy chef. But this is all it really is. It's just a few ingredients added on top that add a lot of color. So that's those things. I'm going to put this aside. Now, next, I have over here, I have an arugula salad. So I have actually just a plain bowl of arugula. And I have my arugula, and it called the salad actually, it is based on the original salad. It called for regular red beets. And I was like, red beets, they could be nice, but they're a little boring. I found in the store, I found watermelon radish, which I just realized it's not a beet, it's a radish, fine, which is always very pretty. So stuck some watermelon radish in it. And then I also found these, love these also, candy cane beets. I think there's a few different ways of calling it. I can tell you because I've tried to look in a lot of stores. They didn't know what I was talking about. And then just sticking randomly around here, some candy cane beets. And already we have tons of color over here. Then, you don't want a salad all beets. Hold on, gonna add a little bit more. We have mushrooms over here. I got, I think they're called oyster mushrooms, just to make things a little bit more exciting. So add some oyster mushrooms throughout the salad, just randomly. And then also another thing, like crunch on top of a salad, like that could always add like prettiness, and is very basic because I'm not making anything. I'm just taking it from, always pomegranate seeds. So we got the pomegranate seeds over here. And then I have over here now pistachios. Again, sometimes I'm going to spend a little bit more, but I realized over time that sanity costs. So I'm not going to sit there like I used to and open up a bunch of, unshelled a bunch of pistachios. I'm just going to take the already shelled pistachios, put them on top. And there we have the salad. Again, if I had a little more time, I'd probably add some other ingredients. But right now we have a very colorful salad, very photogenic salad. Looks very pretty in pictures. By the way, it tastes good.
So you take pictures for us of all the things that you're doing tonight.
Okay, I have pre-pictures, but I think I have some friends over there who might be able to take pictures.
And are you going to share dressings with us? Someone else asked that.
I could definitely share dressings. One thing I'm going to say about dressings. So for years, a long time, pretty much until now, I would be sitting there measuring like ingredient after ingredient. Came this year's Tishrei, where my kitchen that was supposed to be ready for Tishrei was not ready at all, like complete construction zone. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make all these salads. I'm going to make everything. I can chop a salad without a kitchen, but I'm not going to sit there and measure ingredients. And I went to a bunch of stores and I actually found, I just kind of like matched ready-made salad dressings with salads, what I thought might be like kind of similar to the ones I made. And by the way, not one guest complained. There was nobody who came to me and was like, hey, how come you didn't put that like pre-measured dressing, the one that takes you 5 hours to make, or a full day to prepare? Like, just nobody missed it. So I hope not. So anyways, that might be one of my new things. I'm going to stop with the measuring out the salad dressings. So that's this salad over here. We're going to move it along. I will get pictures of it afterwards. Okay. Now we have a kale salad. Now this salad also, I actually went to a friend's daughter's bas mitzvah, and I asked her for the recipe of her salad there, and she was like, Ita, I hate to tell you this, but I got this from you. So I changed it very, very much from the original because I was making it for the first time for Rosh Hashanah, and I was like, you need a lot of color. Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot, you just need like, it's Yom Tiv, it's a month of Yom Tivs, you need a lot of color. So this one has white cabbage. Again, some of this is made up by me, but white cabbage with some carrots in it. And then I don't think this was part of the recipe, but purple, because you always need to add a little purple, some color. Now this salad, I think it originally called for fresh figs. Those are not always in season. And I know sometimes I do spend a little bit more for sanity, but it doesn't have to be fresh figs. I made it with dry figs, and it's actually tastes really good with dry figs too. But right now I happen to have both. So the fresh figs are always very pretty. So at least for, to the eye, the fresh figs add a lot. So we have the fresh figs over here. I'm going to show you a little bit closer when I can. Next time I'm going to get an assistant who can, show you a little more closely while I'm doing it. So I just make sure to put a lot of it, especially if I'm buying a thing of a whole container of fresh figs. I want to, get my money's worth and put a lot of it on. So we have the fresh figs over here. And then, and then this one, I think you may have had, it was for Rosh Hashanah, I think you may have had an apple in it. And I was like, okay, apple, I always make myself a little bit in advance because I don't want guests walking in and I can't think straight. I want it to be made beforehand. So apples turn brown. I was like, let me do grapes. But once I'm doing grapes, let me do red grapes and green grapes. So here we have my red grapes, having a whole bunch. This is actually like one of the more photogenic salads that I have. So we have some green grapes over here too. Ooh, hold on. Let's do the ones that are cut. Okay, and I want to make sure I'm not missing any ingredients for this one. Okay, hold on. There's a lot more ingredients. Let me see what. Oh, sorry. This has sweet potato, and I realized something was missing. It must have sweet potato, and sweet potato is inexpensive and very easy. So we have sweet potato over here, added to the salad. So we have lots of pops of all different colors, and again, if you can, pomegranate seeds because they're very pretty. My Rosh Hashanah salads are always the prettiest. Here, so lots of pomegranate seeds. Now, I did buy pre-seeded pomegranate seeds this time. I usually don't because I have a hard time spending that money, but we had lack of time today. Okay, so here we go. We have a kale salad with so many pretty colors. I actually found a great salad dressing, store-bought salad dressing that went for this one. And nobody missed the salad dressing that has about 40 ingredients that I, did not want to make. So that's part of my shortcuts. Okay, so we're going to move this salad. I have to see what's next. Okay, so now I have, so I'm starting with a dessert. So custard pie. I don't know if you've ever seen sometimes in bakeries, you see these custard pies. It's in a pie crust, custard with fruits on top, and it's got like a shine to it. So I once wanted to make that. I think I found a recipe online. I made a pie crust. I made the custard. It was such a long, tedious experience. It was along with like 10 other desserts. I don't even know if anyone ate it, finished it. Anyway, I found the best shortcuts for this. Again, you might have to have kosher stores nearby, but so this is my really good friend. I would never even notice it in the supermarket before. It's just a box. Inside comes ready-made custard. You don't have to be making your own custard. Ready-made mini graham cracker pie crust. So again, you don't have to make that either. And what's really cute about it is that it's mini. So it's just each person gets their own serving. So hold on, I'm going to show you this. So I'm going to make it a little nicer when I'm not on camera. But here all I do is take the pie shell, take the custard, put it inside. Now you want to have pretty fruit on top of it. I have lots of options here. I have star fruit, which by the way also has other names. I have strawberry, I have blackberry, even figs. I usually don't put too many on one because it just ends up looking messy. I'll do like 3. So I wouldn't really do it like this. Let me make it a little nicer. Take the strawberry out. There's too many colors going on. Okay, so like a few of each. So I'll do a few figs, a few star fruit, and let's say a few blackberries. Okay, then I honestly really made it up. I don't know what they use when they make it in the store. But I found I had in my house, I had apricot jam. So I literally took the apricot jam, which I'm going to do right now, put it in the microwave. Keeping things very simple, no pots. Hold on 1 second. You're going to see. So I put it in the microwave, kind of made up how much time. I took the apricot jam, brushed it on top. And I mean, I can show you pictures from the past, but you could look on Facebook, Instagram. It was pretty much like they make it in the store. This is not exactly what I would have in mind. I would make it a little bit nicer than this, but I can have the apricot jam ready. It takes a few seconds. Put a little bit on top, and you have this shine, and all of a sudden it looks like it is store-bought. And then people ask me the recipe, and I'm like, it's a secret recipe from my great-grandmother. So we have this. I've actually had those type of things happen a lot. So honestly, I always tell the truth because I'm like, hey, listen, these are shortcuts. You should use them too. So there's that, a little bit of a messy version. You can also do, I've done it a lot, some canned mandarin oranges. Like I said, strawberry. Oh, these are very pretty on here also. Gooseberries, like without the peel. Put it on, put the glaze on. So that's the custard pie. Okay, we're gonna put that aside. Next. Okay, next comes Rosh Hashanah, also honey cake. So people are always giving me honey cakes. They will, I mean, if anybody had a failed honey cake, it sinks right in and it's not a honey cake. Tastes great, doesn't look very pretty. So I was always looking for a great honey cake. Then on a Hilchos group, someone was like, oh, you take Duncan Hines spice cake and you add this and this much honey. Tried it. And of course, I'm like a 4 times the recipe, major flop. Then I was like, 1 second, why am I adding honey? What's wrong with just taking Duncan Hines spice cake by itself, putting it in a bundt pan, making a cake, and now I have my homemade Duncan Hines cake. My homemade honey cake. And then for a few years, I was making icings from scratch. And then I got smart and I was like, okay, so we want honey cake, we want cream cheese frosting. Went to the store, found OU cream cheese frosting. I even used to put it into a bowl, put it in the microwave. Now I put it straight in the microwave. It can't be for too short because it will get clumpy, and a little bit too long will make it too liquidy, but I'm going to show you now. Okay, so literally in the microwave, and I'm going to show you what happens next. So I have this with all different cakes. I'm not sure how much I'm going to end up having time for. While that's going, another really, really basic one is mini. I always like the minis. They're just cute and fun like that. Mini pie crust, a frozen pie crust from the freezer. Literally, you take either s'mores cookie, like the Canara brand or the Oestreicher's brand, stick it inside, bake it. Literally comes into a little cookie pie. Everybody loves it. They always ask me the recipe all the time. It's even nut-free, even better. Then this, it fits perfectly in it. It bakes perfectly, and you have little mini pies. Sometimes I even add a few marshmallows on top. Not necessary. Okay, I think my icing is ready. A couple more. Then I'm just gonna mix it up. I think it needs like 10 more seconds. Hold on. We don't want it clumpy. Okay, 10 more seconds, and then I'm gonna show you. And again, this is my fancy, my fancy dessert. People are asking me the recipe. It takes really nothing to make. By the way, you always could have mess ups with bundt cakes because they are a little difficult. This was my second try, to be honest. I'm still trying to figure that one out. So now we're pouring this over. I actually did it for a perfect amount of time. So that was actually exactly 60 seconds. So you have to pour it very quickly because it starts to harden right away. And there we go. We have a pretty cake. Okay, so there we go. But then this in itself is a little bit boring. We need to make it more exciting. So I found a few different things. Oh, another big tip, besides for colors, also details. It's all in the details. Details are very exciting. So here we go. I found like a gold dusting to put on top. And then always fun, especially like, Rosh Hashanah time. It's always got to have, of course, pomegranate seeds, but gooseberries over here, really pretty with the peel. Stick the gooseberries on over here. A few gooseberries. You always want like a few stuff together. Then we have the figs. So we take a few figs, stick them together right next to it. Here we go. A few figs, and let's add something else exciting. We have some blackberries. Some blackberries over here. Okay, they might be falling off while I'm on camera. Some raspberries. This, by the way, I would stop over here, just so you know, like I don't like to overdo it either, because sometimes less is more. Not always, but sometimes. some raspberries. We can even put some star fruit. But again, I don't think it needs that much. And all of a sudden you have this like this cake and everyone's like, whoa, what's the recipe? The recipe is this and the recipe is this and this. Okay, I also have a similar thing, like a more fun one. I saw a recipe for something like similar to this somewhere. Is my time up? Have a few seconds?
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, good. Okay. So this was supposed to be a chocolate cake, but I don't want to tell you what happened to the chocolate cake. I turned it over in the bunt and it tastes good. It's not pretty. So anyway, so this, it was a kind of like a caramel popcorn. Hold on, let me just check. A caramel popcorn cake. And I was like, oh, wait, that looks really good. Let's make this simple. Found also salted caramel icing. By the way, tastes really good. I'm gonna put it in for 1 minute, literally. Okay, and I also found just ready-made caramel popcorn. Some brands, by the way, I can't remember the name, like really extremely overpriced. It doesn't have to be that. It could be simple, it could be a small thing of it. My icing's almost ready. And then this was a favorite. This is just a fun, easy, fun cake. Looks pretty and takes really no effort. And then so I actually have probably like 10 more desserts like this, things to make it fun. I'm gonna just say this in camera while we're waiting. I also have sometimes I'll take a squash, like a mini kaboka squash or something, cook it and then put like quinoa or salad, serve it inside of the little squash, and then just it's plated on each person's plate, very pretty. Another thing I'll do is I'll take wraps, like just regular wraps, put them in a shell, bake it for a few minutes, and then that's also a little fancy holder for a salad, kind of like Shabbos vibes, I guess. Okay, this is ready. So we have our caramel. I think this may have been put in for a little bit too long. I'm gonna do this really quickly and we're done. Okay, so we have our caramel frosting. A little bit too long, but you get the idea. And so here's the caramel frosting, which tastes really good. And Pillsbury does a great job in it. So why do I need to make my own? Then some popcorn, pile it on top. I like the one with the chocolate on top. It just adds a little color. I've done this also with Oreos, like Oreos with Oreo, like the Oreo crunch like you get for ice creams. Adds a lot of fun and color. I've done it with I saw a recipe for, you have to take pomegranate and molasses and make a whole icing out of it. And I was like, no, we're not buying pomegranate and molasses. Took the cream cheese frosting, took red food coloring like this, one little drop in it, mixed it around, pour that on the cake, put some pomegranate seeds, a little mint, got some mint over here. And that, I think that cake we're not gonna have time for, but I do have it ready. And we have over here.
If you have it ready, go for it. I think everyone's loving this. This is so creative and beautiful.
Okay, hold on. I actually need to find that one. But yeah, so this is an example of the popcorn cake. Now you always, it does fall down, but you always want to stick a little on the bottom. Just, again, it's all in the details. It's fun, and it's all in the details. Now, I actually, the other cake that I had is a red velvet cake. And to tell you the truth, I didn't even put it out over there because I was like, okay, we're not going to end up having time for it. And I'm not sure where it is. I have pictures of it.
Don't worry, we'll send it out.
Don't worry.
Yeah,
I don't want you to sit here while I'm looking for it. I think I put it away. But anyway, very simply, just pomegranate seeds, pinkish frosting, but you don't mix it all the way. So it's kind of like two-tone colored. And then, you know, the mint adds like a little bit of a sophisticated look. And again, like I said, I'm not a blogger, but maybe I'll become a blogger because like now I just did this, like I feel like maybe I'm blogger material. But anyways, no, but these are really just little tips and tricks because I'm just sitting there looking at recipes and I'm like, no, I'm not dirtying 5 pots, and I'm not going to sit there and mix over the stove. I have a microwave. They exist. Let me use them. Anyway, so Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for listening. And if anyone wants some food for Shabbos, I have plenty of fun.
Thank you. Don't worry, you don't look a day older than 18, and your personality, Baruch Hashem, is just as colorful as your food. So thank you so much for all these tips. I know I already got some ideas for Shabbos to enhance my Shabbos. And like Rabbi Braun said, b'schos Nashim Tzedkaniyot, and the schos of all of us adding in Shabbos, whether it's in the halachais and beautifying it for our families, we should be bringing Mashiach. Thank you so much, Ita. That was really great.
Thank you so much for having me. Amen, amen, amen.